Hi, welcome to a webinar, Setting Limits with Kids. I'm Diane Farrell from North Central Behavior Health Systems. One of the first questions someone will ask when the discussion starts about setting limits with kids is whether or not it's too late. Of course, it's always easier to start when children are babies and be consistent throughout their life, but that may not be possible and it isn't always realistic. All things considered, children are resilient and can learn new ways to respond, and they adapt pretty well. We as adults are more likely to struggle with implementing changes. We'll review today how to establish plans to set limits with young children, older school-age children, adolescents, and even ideas about how to set limits with adults. Many of the same limit setting alternatives can be used in relationships with anyone. As I said, it might not be too late, but it's difficult to do. The longer we wait, the harder this is going to be. A couple of very important issues relate to co-parenting. We've often heard that two parents are better than one, but only when the two parents are in agreement and the same rules work to support the child following the rules. It's confusing to children to have two sets of rules. This can happen in married couples as well as divorced couples. Competitive parenting is dangerous. Children learn very quickly how to manipulate the situation and make a mess of any parenting limits. So be sure to have all parents involved in setting limits. If it's impossible to get both parents to be in agreement of the limits, then communication with your children is very important. When two parents cannot agree on what the limits and rules are, talk to your children about it. A conversation might be as simple as saying, "The rules are different at Mom's house, I know, but this is what we're going to do here." Last, if you're a single parent, find a good friend that you can use as a sounding board so that you don't feel isolated. And remember, we all make mistakes in parenting. It's just to be expected. Recognize it, admit it, and move on. What are limits? We all observe limits in our life. Speed limits, credit card limits, starting time and quitting time at work. When one person behaves as another expects, that is setting and following limits. As adults, there are times we might be late for work because we have car trouble. The consequence for the first offense likely won't be termination, but we must demonstrate a respect for the rule at work in order to continue to be employed. It isn't about a power struggle in the example of working, and isn't about a power struggle as parents. Parents are in charge. They're the boss. Good limit setting is recognizing what the expectations are, what the rewards are, and what the consequences are. Good limits in parenting balance the respect for the child with adhering to expectations. Applying limits and setting clear boundaries is possible in all relationships, including those with other adults. Keep in mind that we all operate well when we know what others expect from us. We are on time for work when we know what time to get there. Our friends will stop asking us to borrow money when they don't get it. I think we'll find that we all already follow limits and are successful in setting and following limits. The key is to remain consistent so that children will learn. Let's start with young children. All children want and need limits. It's a natural part of human nature. A university did a study several years ago and observed children on a fenced playground. These children used all of the playground to run and play games. Then they took the fence down and observed the same children play. The children actually used less of the playground, and instead of playing games of tag that took them to the boundaries, they stayed close to the middle of the playground. This demonstrated that without external limits such as the fence, children struggle to establish their own limits. It's important to recognize that children need limits in order to feel loved and protected. They need to know that rules are consistently enforced so that they can trust their parents and trust that their parents will love and protect them. First thing is to recognize what you and your co-parent want. It helps to have a goal that both parents can agree on, and many times this is a big picture goal, such as raising children to be responsible adults with jobs and families of their own. Many parents disagree on the limits and rules, but identifying a big picture goal can help when there's disagreement. The parents then can identify behaviors that lead to this goal. These might be different for each of us, but as long as we're working towards the same goal, parents can start with setting smaller goals. Parents can agree that there are certain behaviors that lead to successful adults, and that is completing chores that are expected, eating healthy, being polite, and learning to be emotionally regulated. In general, good limit setting involves communication with the child and assuring they understand. Young children under 4 mostly have limits set with them by physically picking them up, restraining them, but children over 4 have the ability to understand what the rules are and how they should respond. Let's start with a simple example. Tell your child you want them to hold your hand when you cross the street, or wear the seatbelt in the car. Explaining these rules needs to be concrete and specific so the child will follow the rules. Be kind, be loving, and be specific. Explaining why the rules are needed helps a child to understand the big picture. So hold my hand when crossing the street so that you're safe. And also identifying the consequences. Hold my hand when we cross the street so that you're safe or we won't go. Setting specific limits for young children will also include sharing with them what your expectation is. Allowing them to ask for questions and identifying what the reward or consequence will be. For example, going to Walmart. This is always a challenge. Help the child come up with limits, consequences, and rewards. It doesn't have to be something you buy, but it could be just as simple as reading a book together. So you say to your child, I need for you to stay with me, not argue and not beg for things. We want to get our shopping done quickly so we can go home and watch a DVD together or read a book together. It is a lot to say to a 4-year-old, and remember, timing is critical. Shopping when they're tired or hungry is likely to be a disaster. Be respectful, and understand that your child may not always be able to do what's expected. If you can be respectful to them when they're misbehaving and implement consequences, they'll learn quickly this is part of your love for them. Something to say might be, I bet you're hungry. Would a snack help? And then follow my direction and we'll go home so that you can rest. It's also a good reminder to give warnings to children rather than jump to the consequences. There are a lot of behaviors for young children that can be managed through good limit setting. Issues like sleeping in their own bed can be resolved with consistently setting the limit and reviewing what the child's concern is. Do they need for you to check for monsters under the bed? Then this can be part of the routine. Any rewards or consequences still need to be able to be implemented before the next bedtime. The hardest part is going to be for an adult to return the child to bed in the middle of the night. It's much easier to allow them to crawl into your bed, and this is their reward. It takes a few nights to teach a child that they'll be returned to their own bed in the middle of the night. Let's move on to older children. Limits for school-age children follow the same basic format. School-age children will be more invested in following limits if they're involved in the rewards and consequences. School-age children also understand that setting limits reflects a loving parental role. They need to have someone take charge at home, just as they see the teacher take charge at school. Sometimes parents feel that since a child has to follow rules and limits all day at school, they shouldn't have to do this at home. It's not good parenting to ignore setting good boundaries. It's important to recognize that if you're just starting to set limits at this age, there'll be some pushback. It doesn't mean it isn't working. It actually means it is working. Hang in there. School-age children have the ability to understand the process related to setting limits. They're in school all day. They understand limits. Begin by defining what you want to set as the goal. The big picture still remains that you want them to be a responsible adult, but your immediate goal is to help them be successful in school. So, start by setting a limit that they cannot watch TV or play video games until their homework is done. Sometimes after sitting in school all day, free time is a good idea. But this is the parent's choice. Be sure to listen to any concerns that they have. Many times, they're not able to verbalize their concerns well, but listen and reframe what they're saying. Rewards and consequences need to be worked out together. Saying to a child, "because I said so," isn't going to work. Consider how to verbalize your reasoning before giving them the rule. Make the consequences and rewards implemented before the next day so they can start each day with a clean slate. Most important, remember that any limits or rules need to be implemented when the parent is home. If the child has time home alone after school before a parent returns home, that is not when homework should be done. That is the time you can offer them free time to watch TV, play, or be outside. Remember, it's impossible to set limits if the parent is not home. It's difficult to set limits if a parent is home but unavailable. Unavailable parents might be busy with their own tasks, talking on the phone, and generally not paying attention. Working parents work as parents as well. Holding those two jobs is very difficult. But if you want to make your children follow the limits, set a good example. If a child needs to read, listen to them read aloud or read on your own while they read silently. Rewards and consequences need to be specific and clearly understood. They also need to be clearly communicated. Many times children fight over homework because they're tired. Children are involved in a lot of extracurricular activities such as sports or music, lessons, dance, all kinds of things are available. It's nice to have some healthy participation, but these are time-consuming and tiring. They're not an excuse for not doing homework. The expectation is the same regardless of the events of the day. The last thing is to observe your child doing the homework and make sure that this is something that they have the ability to do. If you see that your child struggles with understanding what's expected in the homework, communicate with the teacher. There might be some kind of special help that the school can provide. Adolescence, wow, what can I say? This is a difficult age. It isn't too late to start, but even if you've been setting good limits all along, they're going to argue every rule. You can count on that. Whatever limits you set will be the worst thing that's ever happened in their life. Even if you've set limits all along, like I said, you're going to be challenged by your adolescent. If you decide to start at this age, it's not too late, but it's still going to be challenging. It's important to remember that you are not the adolescent. Parents many times make a big mistake of thinking that this is about what they experienced in their adolescence and their success and failure. You've already been an adolescent. You've already experienced all of this. Now it's their turn. None of what is going on with your child is about you. So take a deep breath and become the boss. It's intimidating, but the more they talk and yell and slam doors, the more you're establishing your control. It's even more important at this age to be consistent and loving. The harder they are to love, the more important it is to love them anyway. At this age, you can expect that they'll behave like a preschooler and sometimes like an adult. But continue to listen to what they're saying, repeat it back so they know that you heard, and try to collaborate to come up with limits, rewards, and consequences for their lifestyle. Find support. Know that they're going to grow up and be adults. Remind yourself of what the big picture goal is, and that is to raise a child into a healthy and responsible adult. You also want to have a healthy relationship with your adolescent. One example is setting curfew. This is always a challenge for parents, and this is an area all adolescents push back on. The first thing to remember is that this is best done before your child is walking out the door. Everyone should know what time they're expected home, and then for each event it's reviewed. As a parent, it's important to recognize that adolescents need to be listened to and respected as well. If there's a valid reason for an exception from a curfew, parents should be flexible enough to accommodate this. One example is when my daughter was in high school, she was organizing a Relay for Life team. Her curfew was 11:30, and I was pretty strict about that. Initially, I wouldn't let her stay out past the curfew even to take part in this. But it was important for her to do that. Adolescents need to know what the outcome will be. Remember that consequences are not punishment. Consequences are part of parenting. Consequences might just be that a reward is removed. Remember that being able to go out with friends is not a right, it's a privilege that they must work towards. If you set consequences for them, you have to be available as a parent and able to keep the consequence. So if you ground your child, you need to be home as well. If a child or an adolescent is able to keep the rules and follow the rules, they may just be able to keep the same curfew, or you might feel like it's time to extend it. Again, with each adolescent and each situation, you're going to want to review this. Be creative as well. Listen to what they want for rewards. And again, recognize that your failure to follow through with any of the consequences, such as grounding, just diminishes their respect for you. Some general issues about limits and rewards is that many parents give up because they're too vague, because they set rules and consequences that are just too hard to keep up with. If you reward your child with something that's so far in the future, everyone loses interest. Like with timeouts for young children, where you set the limit related to their age, it's the same with consequences and rewards for setting limits. For young children, the rewards and consequences should be completed each day so that they start the next day with a clean slate. Remember to keep them realistic. It might not be possible for your child to get all A's, but your goal might just be for them to do their best. And many young children don't understand monetary rewards, and in setting limits as parents, it's not even a part of that to give monetary rewards. In order to keep your children respectful of the consequence and respectful of you, make sure that you're realistic with those consequences. If you tell your child that they'll never get a car when they're 16, when they're a 10-year-old, it doesn't even play into their reality that they'll have a car. So keep the consequences as something that they can experience right away. The last thing is probably the hardest, and that is, as a parent, to set a good example. If you want your child to be respectful of adults, be respectful of teachers, then you need to speak respectfully of your boss at home. You need to speak respectfully of their other parent. This is many times the hardest thing, and it's hard to remember that when you're frustrated with your own life, it can be shared outside of your child's view so that you're able to verbalize your own concerns and not pull your child into it. Another frustration that parents have is that they want to discourage their children from underage drinking. And in order to be clear on that rule, don't discuss your own underage drinking, because what they hear then is not your rule that they can't drink underage, but your experience that it was fun. I want to thank you for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions or want to communicate back about the webinar, all the information is here on the screen. Thank you.